Citizens, patriots, beloved children of God, we stand here under assault from our betters in the high towers. They control the economy, the news, and soon our divine right to determine our own destinies. We must stand up to the overlords, the false prophets, and fight with every ounce of strength that flows through our veins. We built this empire with our own hands, and by the good grace of the Lord, this empire will last forever!
Hey there! If you're returning to this channel from my last ghost video from about, 8 months ago, then welcome back. If not, well, stick around anyway. Please. Let's revisit the band's previous album, Prequel. At the end of its tour cycle, the mysterious patriarch Papa Nile collapsed dead on stage, marking Cardinal Copia's ascension to the rank of Papa Emeritus, the fourth iteration. However, the COVID-19 pandemic delayed the band's forward progress, which is hilarious considering Prequel's subject matter. The newly anointed Papa 4 would still appear a few more times, most notably in the form of a single released for the movie Halloween Kills, entitled Hunter's Moon. And after a few more singles, IMPERA finally dropped in March of 2022. The album's concept was inspired by frontman Tobias Forge reading the book The Rule of Empires by Timothy Parsons in 2013. IMPERA's narrative and sound in some ways were the logical outcome of the narrative and sound previously espoused by Prequel. While Prequel's story was linear and contained, IMPERA's is broad and metaphorical, a prophetic tragedy about the cyclical rise and fall of empires. And while Prequel's sound jumped from 70s and 80s inspired hard and soft rock, IMPERA injects it with a double dose of steroids and hair growth cream, resulting in a wild, exuberant tribute to the era's rock and glam metal giants. While the album's songwriting and technical elements are impressive, some fans unfavorably view IMPERA as a further shift from Ghost's heavier, more liturgical roots. Yet while outwardly, IMPERA's music and associated tour might seem brighter and goofier, analyzing the album from a narrative perspective reveals the same poetic darkness that's come to define the band since the beginning. But, just like my last video, I feel as though I have to dress for the occasion. You know what? The plague mask doesn't seem as fitting this time. Excuse me.
Now, cry havoc, and let slip the dogs of war. I'm telling you, the only reason I have all these masks is because I have the worst farts. This is the only thing that helps.
We open with Imperium, a transitional instrumental piece described by Tonel Fungus as a national anthem opening, the primary motif of the empire in question, which I will not play in full as it is ripe for copyright strikes, so instead enjoy this cover. He continues, "There's a big city landscape and this cart rolling into town at sunrise. It has a beginning element that I like. Imperium suggests optimism and power, yet like all empires, there's the implication that this story won't have a happy ending. Which leads right into... I cannot imagine the atmosphere when this song first debuted live. Explosive sonic bombast and riffs straight from the glam rock era define Kerion, not only Ghost's most energetic opener to date, but also stand out in that it's currently Ghost's only original song written in a major key. Lyrically, Kerion serves as a frenetic call to action, the first big boom of the Empire, built from the ashes of the previous one, and all that is considered archaic or unorthodox, usurped by the new Empire's ideals. Progress blazes forward as religious institutions establish themselves, suppressing dissent and lording over their subjects. The ruins of burning temples are swept away, metaphorical handmaids have their voices silenced, and not even young boys are safe from the grasps of church leaders. Yet amid the joyous proclamations, one name is cried out. Hypatia.
Hypatia. Hypatia.
Or Hypatia, whichever. A female astronomer from Alexandria, a well-respected figure and pioneer in the field, who was murdered by a fanatical Christian mob in 415 AD. Her eyes gouged out and her flesh cleaved from bones, within a church that had once been a pagan temple called the Kerion. In Toblerone Fudge's eyes, Hypatia represents forward thinking, a subversion on the zeitgeist's impressions of science and gender, and how she represented a threat to the established order, denoted by her satirical branding as a satanic apostate witch. He alleges, Kerion has the darkest lyrics ever, horrendous, even darker than some of the things I've written before, about fictional darkness. This is about actual darkness. True enough, despite the Empire's propagation, references to its distance from the stench of heaven and the doom that awaits fallen paradises foreshadows its eventual fate. The newly formed Empire might have a facade of idyllic perfection, but its people churn with internal darkness that cannot possibly be contained. These are the Spillways. The titular track utilizes pianos, energetic vocals, and shifting key changes to put forward another glitzy romp, but the darkness it speaks of still resonates just as deeply. This darkness can come in many forms: adversity, rebellion, identity, righteous anger, anything that is frowned upon or repressed by institutions of power. It is something that we, as little people under the Empire's rule, all have in some form or capacity. Some might be good at masking and burying it. Some try and use religion, or benediction, to cleanse themselves of it, but it's never to any avail. The cruel beast, Satan, the burning individual in our souls beneath all the stigma and dogma, is ever hungry, eager to burst free. No matter of faith, rage, or even forgiveness can stop it. In terms of IMPERA's narrative, though, I like to think that there is one individual Spillways especially applies to, a faceless radical lying in the shadows, letting the intrusive thoughts win. So far, though, he's lying in wait, unsure what to make of these bold revelations, but the upcoming entry might provide an answer. For the record, my favorite IMPERA track. Grungy riffs, a subdued tempo, and a bleeding thread of menace define this song, a devilish throwback to the melodic seduction of tracks like Melior's Cerise. The narrator is Satan, denoted by his titles Little Sunshine, a reference to the morning star, and Mephistopheles, originally a demon from Faustian lore, but nowadays commonly invoked as one of Satan's many names. Little Sunshine is also one of the aliases of Aleister Crowley, the English artist and occultist whose philosophies on magic, the CK version, and social critiques defined pagan and lowercase satanic ideology in the decades to come. Crowley's image is also directly referenced on IMPERA's cover art. Otherwise, the song is an expansion on ideas present in Spillways. Whereas that cue was about internal darkness breaking free, Call Me Little Sunshine is about channeling that darkness towards a central figure, one that feeds off it and plants something else within the soul, something decidedly more grim. It's the devil, basically, speaking to the little person in front of his or her computer or in their little room, calling out for them, "I'm always here for you." In this context, it's not a good thing. The booklet art and lyrics also make explicit references to smoking opium, a practice that was common in the late 19th century. Lighting up with a pipe allows one to see visions, in this case, Satan. Along with a historical reference, it's a commentary on the indulgence of an empire in excess, allowing Satan to slip in and influence vulnerable minds. Returning to our faceless radical, perhaps this is the shadowy spark he needed to realize his potential and break free. Hot on the heels of Call Me Little Sunshine, Hunter's Moon is another evocation of Ghost's menace and horror genre roots. First heard in the end credits of the 2021 film Halloween Kills, this track utilizes variable time signatures, chanting Latin choirs, and psychedelic wailing guitars to convey a mood of explosive eeriness. The lyrics speak from the perspective of a killer returning to one of his childhood haunts, itching to reconnect with those from his past, and rekindle his murderous reign. Halloween movie parallels aside, Taco Falafel invokes a dark nostalgia and longing for old memories, the idyllic empire of childhood, when things were simple, unaffected by the encroaching crawl of the current empire. And there's no better time to do it than the Hunter's Moon, generally the first full moon in October, a seasonal signal for hunters to gather resources for their future pursuits. One could say it's what our subject was building up to this whole time, a ravenous killer yearning to lash out against the empire that forced him over the edge. But for now, we'll let him fester. We have another banger to address. This track propels us back to the hard, heavy rock, minor key this time, with its pounding bass lines, atmospheric riffs, and stomping rhythm. Watcher in the Sky is a perfect punch of old-school bombast. The lyrics speak of the Empire's attempts to hijack modern scientific advancements, from the technological searchlights to the biological evolutionary optics, aka the eyes in our heads, to search the skies for God. Timbuktu, France sees this as an ironically humorous undertaking. It enthusiastically explains how we can utilize science to make the world smaller and reverse scientific things, basically a flattened Earth. The Empire has propped God as their ultimate prize, despite his presence in the world being an apparent fiction, and they would do anything to try and reach his grace, deceptive and shaky as it might be, Machiavellian maybe. Even they recognize that despite their efforts to attain perfection on Earth, a better place exists in heaven above, which they desperately try to make visible and tangible. Despite faith in God being dissimilar from reasonable proofs for something's existence, the Empire believes that contact, or communication, is the end goal for belief, the key to their locks, and they are more than willing to exclude others and let their realm rot, if it means assuring that their conceited efforts to see God would not be in vain. While not referenced in the lyrics, Watcher in the Sky invokes the biblical Tower of Babel, a mass architectural endeavor to build a tower to reach God in heaven, resulting in him scrambling their universal language and dispersing them across the earth. But while in that story, God had the wherewithal to intervene, Watcher in the Sky implies that all of the Empire's efforts to reach heaven would be met with silence, as the final chorus loops endlessly, fading into a void, rendering the search futile. The transitional instrumental, Dominion, a sweeping look at the wider landscape, uses its low brassy textures to shift into...
Oh god, no.
Yes, we have arrived at Ghost's most divisive song to date. Even to this day, you'll see arguments about 20s crop up on the subreddit. Some say it's genius, some say it's a return to metal form for Ghost. Others say it's corny and crappily written and weird.
As for me, I was on the hate train for a while, but the song came to grow on me over a course of, well, several months. It was a long adjustment.
But as divisive as it is, it's also one of the band's most interesting and dynamic tracks. So let's break it down. 20s was inspired by reggaeton, a fast-paced and beefy form of electronic music that originated in Panama in the 1980s, and has spread across Central and South America, attaining massive popularity and cultural presence. So much so that Brazilian crowds actually chanted for its performance at Ghost's tour stop in September 2023.
I can tell you this, there will be no 20s. That's from the bottom of my heart. I'm really sorry about that, but next time, I promise we will play it to you.
Tobias commented how he had witnessed a reggaeton artist in Brazil and was blown away by his sheer aggression, which planted the seeds for the oak that would become 20s, a reggaeton beat underlying brassy orchestrations, slamming percussion, and some of the shreddiest guitar playing in the band's discography. It's a worthy accompaniment for the lyrics, a warmongering call to arms, riling up the people against their betters, so eloquently dubbed Ivy League dopes, promising them all the money, freedom, and carnal pleasures they could ask for. It's an obvious satire on American politicians and corporate tycoons, comparing the environment of the 1920s to that of the 2020s, with such blatant references as Donald Trump's Hollywood Access tape. You can even see him in the booklet art. 20s represents the Empire's fever pitch. It's a ballad of indulgence and pugilism, the theme song of bloodthirsty radicals, rioting in support of their ruler, calling for the installation of the new Reich. There's no going back now. The Empire has grown too crazy and large for its own good, and the only thing it can do now is wallow in its own rageful excess. But the Empire's thought leaders aren't done yet. Despite conveying a radical tonal shift from its predecessor, Darkness at the Heart of My Love follows the same thematic trend. While 20s was about promises of riches and glory sought through violence, this song promises love, freedom, and comfort, sought through devotion and submission to a toxic higher power. The narrator assures listeners that his love is all they need to not feel alone, eerily reminiscent of Satan's promise in Call Me Little Sunshine. Whether the narrator is Satan, one of the Empire's cultish thought leaders, or Satan speaking through them, is irrelevant. The message is the same. I can give you all that you want if you just follow me and do as I say. This includes painting pairs of eyes and spilling wine, historically pagan rituals meant to communicate with divine entities. This sacrilegious hypocrisy is the point, since the song concerns people promoting values under the guise of being God-fearing and righteous, while they practice none of it. Supposedly Christian leaders commanding their followers to perform ungodly rites to achieve the love and freedom religion had promised them. There's no more perfect example of power and control. Going back to the singer's POV, with a reference to the narrator's serpentine path, it's apparent that this is Satan serenading the listener, tempting them to his cold, deep-running love. But again, the metaphor equally applies to the Empire's holy men, controlling the masses with half-baked promises that satisfy short-term, but damage their long-term bonds with God. But if you thought that was too much of a downer, let's get back to the raving spirit with Griftwood. With riffs straight from Van Halen and period-appropriate corny lyrics, it's perhaps the glammiest track on the album. Thematically, it falls in tandem with the previous two songs, about religious grifters winning over the masses with false promises of greatness and righteousness. In this case, the narrator promises the people that he's their rock, and that the suffering, sacrifices, and debt incurred in the name of religion is worth it, as they will eventually sit high atop spires and observe burning pyres, content in their superiority over the supposedly unenlightened. Yet in the end, the narrator is ultimately the winner, since the whole thing is just one giant scam, or grift. After all, you would be working hand in hand with the greatest deceiver. As Tuesday Friday puts it, Griftwood is about people who will say or do anything to advance themselves, citing Bible thumpers and anti-vaxxers who triple boost themselves anyway as examples.
Yeah, IMPERA's not exactly deep with its satire, but Griftwood is in a whole other stratosphere of blatantly obvious.
The bridge, however, is the most interesting part of the song, as the lyrics transition to a gospel-like adulation, worshipping the Holy Mother. This could be a reference to the woman who washed Jesus' feet in the Bible, the narrator likening himself to Jesus. And the overblown nature of the bridge suggests the narrator is simply being performative for his followers, kind of like people who use buzzwords and volume to amplify their clout. Hey, if I sing loudly enough about the Holy Mother, then people will believe me.
And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Griftwood's a good song, even if its lyrical content is on the shallow side. But it represents the Empire's most delirious heights, and there's only one direction things can go now. A brief interlude on guitars segues seamlessly into Respite on the Spitalfields continues Ghost's trend of subdued emotional album closers. While this one's more muscular than prequel's Life Eternal, it speaks of the Empire's darkest days, its collapse, the unveiling of the matchstick framework it was built upon, and all it took was one man. On one hand, the song is about Jack the Ripper, the autumnal reaper who plagued Victorian London in 1888, killing 5 women over a span of a few months, and possibly more over the following few years. The culprit's reign of terror sparked uncertainty and unrest, compounded by the fact that he was never caught or officially identified. On the other hand, Respite could also be about the faceless radical proposed earlier in the album, the man who finally snapped and lashed out at the Empire that twisted him so deeply, the murderous crafter. It would seem that the Empire's campaign of repression, hypocrisy, and power-tripping was not only too much for him to handle, but for the Empire itself to handle. Truly the distant thunder that they could not hear. One individual's homicidal outbreak was enough to destroy the Empire's dreams, leaving many dead in the streets, and the narrator to lament how the past was spun like a yarn, or how they had previously constructed false histories to further their imperative, how their lies had tainted something that was good and pure, the equivalent of salting earth with Jesus' tears, and how the killer who had caused so much destruction was ultimately just a man, not the ascending, all-powerful demigod they thought he was. No more than the Wizard of Oz, the lowly man behind the curtain. With that, the last remnants of the Empire go softly into the night, to start the process all over again. The final notes of Respite on the Spitalfields echo the Empire's anthem first heard in Imperium, symbolic of the cycle of empires. Others will build their empire from the ashes of this one, and they will undoubtedly conquer in the same way, learn the same things, make the same mistakes, and meet the same fate. Only for it to happen once more. And again. And again. Hey there, thanks for watching. This video was a lot of fun to make, and I'm hoping it's out by the time the Ghost movie drops. I am beyond excited to see it. I hope it's good, and I hope my theater experience isn't complete dog shit. I want to thank all the folks who put up their concert footage on YouTube that I used, and especially the creators and musicians who put up their performances on YouTube that I incorporated into the video. You can find links to their stuff in the description below. And hey, if you want to support me further, especially if this video gets fraudulently copy-struck, again, well, I am a published author, and you could check out my novel, Hell's Gulf, a wild, wacky, briny horror adventure that I compare to an R-rated Gravity Falls episode, but set in Northwest Florida. And hey, if that isn't a pitch, I don't know what is. Take care, folks. See you all next time.